Misadventures in Babysitting is the 14th episode of the third season of Full House. This is directed by Bill Foster, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode. And this one is very memorable. I have watched Full House all of the way through before, and I'm now rewatching it to discuss it. And there are some episodes that I remember really well, some not so much. This one I could remember very vividly, particularly the part focusing on DJ, and I have to say it's pretty brilliant. It starts off really fun with Joey and Michelle with some dancing flowers. Nice light-hearted way to start things off. We then have two main parts of the narrative. Sometimes I'll discuss things chronologically, sometimes I will group them by narrative or part of the story, and the latter is how I'm going to do it on this occasion. So I'll get in with DJ in a moment, but we also find out that it's been 1 year since Becky and Jesse first met, which is incredible. It doesn't seem like that much time has passed. And they're kind of debating where they should be spending Christmas. Becky wants to go home and bring Jesse with her. Jesse wants to have a very Elvis Christmas, and they can't decide. And then Jesse and Joey are having a poker night. Danny also agrees to play poker, and if you look at the floor, I don't know how Danny was coping. As they get in with the poker game, there's just food, crumbs everywhere. In fact, they're not even crumbs, they're chunks of food just littering the floor. I don't know how Danny managed to cope with it. But they're playing poker, and some of the guys encourage Jesse to phone Becky and tell her he's going to Graceland for Christmas, to have his Elvis Christmas, whether she likes it or not, which is not a great attitude to have. He makes the phone call, leaves a message because she's not there, and it's very clear that Becky is not going to like this. And there is a bit of suspense as we wonder what's going to happen. And when Becky walks in the kitchen door, it is amazing. The change in atmosphere is incredible, and I thought it was very well done. And they decide to try and settle it by playing a card game, and then ultimately they come to a compromise, and they have a really great message here. And Jesse quite rightly made a really valid point that I think is something we can all do well to consider if we're trying to convince somebody to go along with our idea. He points out he doesn't really want to take somebody to Graceland if they're going to be grumpy and have a miserable time, because that's not going to make it a nice time for him. And he pointed out that neither of them would really win in any situation. And I think that was really fascinating. And they ultimately decide to go to Becky's for Christmas and Graceland for New Year, which I thought was a nice way to compromise things with some really nice messages in there. So that part of the story worked really, really well. We then have the rest of it focusing on DJ. And this actually starts out because Kimmy is on the phone to DJ, and everybody wants to use the phone, but DJ is talking to Kimmy. This is, bearing in mind, Kimmy lives next door, and that actually becomes relevant because Kimmy then comes over while on the phone to DJ, and they both talk to each other while on the phone in DJ's bedroom. It's a little bit strange. I'm not sure why they decided to do that, but it certainly helped move the narrative forward. And Danny agrees, and I was quite surprised by this, actually. Danny agrees that DJ can have her own phone line and her own phone number if she can afford to pay for it. And she thinks this is a fantastic idea. She agrees to do some babysitting so she can have her own phone. And we then see her babysitting this kid called Brian, who is very high energy. His performance was absolutely adorable. He's played by Malachi Pearson, and I thought the character was really great, but absolutely a handful for DJ. And Kimmy comes over, and Brian has clearly had some difficult times with Kimmy as he basically runs from her. She threatens to kiss him if he doesn't give back DJ's purse, and the next thing we know, he has his head stuck in between the railings on the stairs. And DJ obviously panics, but they do make the best of the situation by buttering his whole head, which I thought was very, very amusing. Probably not the most sensible thing to do in the situation, but if a kid has been tormenting you and you get the chance to butter their head, then fair enough to DJ, I guess. And what I loved about this is that it's helping to highlight that things can go wrong. Things can be out of our control. It's what you do in that situation that counts. And DJ finds this out because she thinks she's done a bad job of babysitting. And Danny points out to her that actually she did a good job because she did the right thing. There was an issue, And instead of trying to solve it herself, she immediately called Danny for help, which I think was definitely the right approach. As Danny pointed out, DJ does have a history of trying to solve problems on her own, and we've seen this in previous episodes. So we have not just a great message there about how to handle that kind of situation, but we also have some really great character development for DJ, and I think that was really lovely to see. It was nice to have a decent amount of Kimmy. I'm laughing because I've just repictured her sticking her foot in Brian's face when he was stuck between the railings, which was very entertaining. And then ultimately DJ gets her phone. And it just made me very briefly nostalgic for that feeling of having my first phone. I must have been, I think, slightly younger than DJ. In fact, I was about 10, I think, when I got my first phone. Obviously, that was a mobile phone, and it was for emergencies only and not for just using all of the time. Granted, I don't know if I had any friends with a phone either, so I'm not sure what I would do with it. But it gave me that feeling that I hadn't had in many, many years of that responsibility, that fear, that excitement, all of those things DJ must have been feeling. And I thought it was pretty great. So a really fun episode, very, very memorable, with a lot of great messages in it as well. So needless to say, it doesn't surprise me that I remembered this very, very well, because Misadventures and Babysitting is a brilliant episode, and I'm sure it's one that I will always really thoroughly enjoy.